Hi there, it's Rachel Greig for Darkroom Door. In this video I want to share with you the new distress colour for January 2023. It's called Lost Shadow and it's a really nice light grey colour. So I've got a few of the products out here on my table. Just disregard my little label here. I actually accidentally left an inked little paper towel on that lid, so that's why that's got a little stain on it. But otherwise everything else is all nice and clean and new and ready to go. And I just want to share with you just some ways you can use these products. So it is a really nice little pale neutral colour, so it's a little light grey colour, and what I love about it is that it can be really subtle, and it can also be used with lots of other ink colours in the distress line. So I just want to show you what it looks like here. This is just stamped. This is actually the paint used to stamp onto a white tag, and you can just see how subtle that is and how beautiful that is if you wanted to create just some really nice simple cards or projects or stamping into your art journals. So that's just a little sample there, but I just want to have a little play with these products and just show you how they can be used. So I just want to start off with the actual distress ink, and I've just got an ink blending tool and I'm just putting a little domed foam on top of it. Now I've already used it here with the Lost Shadow ink, so that's why I've got that one out there. And I'm just going to grab a stencil and I'll just show you the brick wall stencil here. So I'm just going to place this down onto my tag and then just rubbing the ink blending tool directly into the ink pad and then just lightly sponging it here over the tag. So if you wanted to keep your stencil in place, you can add like a little bit of double-sided adhesive underneath. I've just put it down without doing that, so I'm just going to firmly hold the tag, but I just want to give you a little idea here. I'm not going to sponge the whole thing, just a little bit here and just fade out a little bit there, and then just lift that off. And so you can see there how that looks just on a white tag, just sponged there using the distress ink. And if you wanted to sponge directly into an art journal, so this was an art journal page that I started with the Lumberjack Plaid ink, which was released last year. And so I'll just continue decorating this page. I've just got the little Starry Night stencil and I'll just rub into that ink pad there and then just show you here how it looks when it's sponged inside one of these stencils. So it's just a really nice little subtle colour, so that's why it means that it can go with any of your other inks. So see how that just gives you a nice little subtle addition there to this page here. So it looks really lovely with these little Starry Night stencil, and I'll just add a little bit more down here. And you can see there how nice it is. So it, even though it is a nice little light neutral, it's one of those ones that is just going to go with any of your projects, because, and also any of the other ink pads and the ink colours, so you can just blend it out to mix and match with your projects, and it'll just make really nice little backgrounds as well. It also looks nice with other styles of stencils, so if you wanted to use the same ink colour, so the same Lost Shadow, but you just want to use a different stencil to then continue on creating this background. So I'm just using this as the Handwritten script small stencil. So you can see there how the background can then blend into this design just using that same ink, and then just sponging it just to fill this part of the background. So it's just a lovely ink colour to then just begin little parts there of your art journal backgrounds or your card making backgrounds. So that's just one little way there to show you how the distress ink looks when you're using it with an ink blending tool and a foam. Here's another stencil that'll look great with this colour. This is the Moon stencil, and I've got out the Oxide pad for this one, just getting a different foam as well. So just rubbing the foam here onto the ink pad and then placing my stencil onto my tag. I'm just using a white Dina Wakley tag, and then just simply sponging through this stencil. Now the Oxide pad is a pigment and dye mix, so like a fusion of pigment and dye. So this ink pad here will be a little bit more opaque than the normal Distress. The Distress is just a translucent colour, so this one will just be a little bit more milky, a little bit more opaque, and it'll give you a really nice coverage there when you sponge through it. So I don't know if you can see there. So you can see there the subtlety of that colour and how beautiful it looks there. Now if you wanted to blend that again with a few stars, let's just add a few little stars to this tag here. Now this would make a beautiful little baby card or a baby tag if you needed to make a little gift tag for somebody. So I'm just going to sponge a few little stars around the edge. And if you wanted to add a pop of colour, you could do that. You could then add like a sentiment in a bright yellow or a bright pink or green, bright blue, or even a subtle blue, any of those other colours. So I'm just adding a few little stars just around the sides here, just to make it look like the moon is in the sky. So there you go, you can just see how nice and subtle that colour is there. And because the Oxide is or does have that opaqueness to it, I just want to show you, I've got a little black tag here. So this is a black tag, and now I've just got the mesh stencil, and I'm just going to sponge through the stencil here just to add a little bit of pattern to this black tag. Now this would make a really nice background just to start off this tag, and then you can layer other things on top like focal images, some collage pieces, anything like that. But I just want to show you how it can look when you use it on black. And here's another idea using our little arch stencils. So I've just got another black piece of cardstock there and just laying this down here, and then just using the Oxide pad, and this will just make a really nice little subtle shape here on the black cardstock, and it'll just give it that nice little stone look. So it just it gives you lots of versatility basically, even though it is a little subtle colour, the Lost Shadow. It when you use it on different types of cardstocks, you'll get different effects as well, like different opacities. So this here I'm just blending this out so it looks nice and smooth, and then when you lift that up, you've then got your little archway there on black cardstock. Okay, so let me show you now how you can use the Distress paint to stamp up this stamp here. So this is a stamp here from our Bold Blossoms stamp set. So it's just this little pentas flower just here. And I'll just put a little bit of the paint. So you've got a mixing ball inside, so you can just shake it up a little bit and then pour a little bit here on my mat. And then again, just using an ink blending foam. So I've just got a little piece of foam on top of that, and I'm just going to smoosh it around into the paint so then it covers the foam, and then tap it gently onto the stamp, and then we will stamp it. So I love using Distress paint for stamping because Distress paint is quite a fluid paint. It's really nice to use for stamping, and it keeps all the detail in the stamps, which is really lovely. So if I just move this here and then ink it up and then press it firmly onto my cardstock, and then there you can see your little stamped image. And so I'll just grab a bit more paint here, and then I'll just reapply some of this paint so I can do a little double image here of this flower. So just tapping that onto the flower, and then we'll just go down a little bit further and then pressing that firmly onto the cardstock and then lift off. So the cardstock I'm using is just a matte white cardstock, and so the paint will just sink into that cardstock really nicely, so it's really got a nice matte finish to it. So you could just simply add a sentiment to this, and then it will work really nicely then onto a card, and you can just mount it onto black or grey or white just to keep it a really nice simple card. And after you've finished using the paint on the stamp, just spritz it with a little bit of water and then just wipe it off here with a rag or towel just to clean off that stamp, because you don't want the paint to dry on that stamp, otherwise it will dry permanently on the stamp. So just give it a little bit of a clean just after you've finished using the stamp. You can also use the paint through a stencil just to add some nice little layers to your art journals, especially over the top of some already inked backgrounds here, and it just adds a really nice subtle pattern. So I'm just going to show you here. I'm just going to go over a little bit of the vacant areas and then also some of the inked areas just to show you the difference. So if I lift that up there, so there you can see how that paint goes over the inked backgrounds and then also up here just on the plain areas of that background page. I'll just do a little bit more over here. I've used quite a lot of paint over there, so if I just use up the paint over here, and again just showing you how it creates that really fun painted background. And it also looks great over craft cardstock, so I'll just layer, this is the little checkered stencil, just lay a stencil over the top of here and just create a really simple little background, just using up little leftover bits of paint from the other projects that I was just working on. So it just means that if you've got spare tags or spare art journal pages, you can just use up your paint to create more backgrounds. And you can see how really nice it looks on the craft, and I've had a lot of paint here and then just running out of paint up here, but it gives a really nice shaded look to this background. So it just means that you can use this ink for a lot of different surfaces. It doesn't have to be just on white or black, you can also use it on craft as well. So now I'd like to show you some of the sprays. I've just pulled out the brick wall stencil just to continue on with that theme. So I'm just working in a Strathmore journal. So this is, I'll show you the front cover. This is a mixed media Strathmore journal. It'll also look really nice in the Dylusion journals or the Dina Wakley journals. And I'll just start off here with the Oxide spray. So this one has a mixing ball in it, so you just need to give it a little bit of a shake. And then I'm just going to spritz gently through this stencil, to give it a bit of a subtle background here. And I didn't go through all of the stencil, I just wanted a little bit of a hint for this background. And then you can see there how nice that looks on that art journal page. So it's just a really easy way just to start your art journal pages. If you're afraid of the blank page, just grab a stencil, and this is a really nice ink color to start with because it's not that bold, and it's just a nice little easy way to begin your art journal backgrounds. And then you can continue to layer on top of that. You can add collage pieces, anything like that to your pages. For this next one, I've got out a Dylusions large journal. So this is one of her large journals here. Just found a little blank page up the back. And for this one here, I'll show you how to use the spray stain. So I'm just using the Lavender stencil. So this one is a design more so than a pattern. And I'm just spritzing this ink through the stencil just to give it some ink throughout these little lavender stems. And then lifting this up, and then you can see there the little lavender stems there on that page and how it looks. Again, with the spray, you've got that really nice difference in thickness or shading. So here there was lots of spray, so that's like a full color there, and then here you can actually see the little spray parts of it. So you'll get different effects just depending on how much or how little you spray. So if I lift that up there, I can show you the difference. See how you've got you can see the little spray here, which gives you a really nice texture or a texture looking kind of image, and then this is far more wet, so then you've got that full watercolor look as well. So that's why it's really nice to have the spray, because you can get those different effects. So now I want to share with you how you can use the Distress Embossing Glaze. So I've got out this background stamp. This is the stone background stamp, which I think will look fabulous with the embossing glaze. So I've just got it here on an acrylic block, and I'm going to ink it up using Distress Embossing Ink. So just tapping the embossing ink onto the stamp. Now with stamps this large, I always like to put the stamp facing up, so then I can see where I'm inking the stamp, just to make sure that the whole stamp is covered in ink. So I'll just continue doing this until I feel like there's enough ink on the stamp, which means I will go over the stamp several times just to make sure that the entire stamp has got some ink on it. And then once you've inked up your stamp, I've just got some white cardstock here, so I'm just going to stamp onto the cardstock, and you just want to press really firmly just to make sure that that stamp is connecting with that cardstock entirely. Okay, and then just peeling that off. So you might just be able to see it just ever so slightly there in frame that that ink has just stamped that image. So what we'll do now is just using this embossing glaze, just going to pour some of it over the image, and I'll just pour a little bit at the top there and then just use the excess to cover the rest of that stamped image. Then tap off any excess so you can see there how the design has taken that powder. And then I will just set that aside, and then any excess powder just pour it straight back into the jar. Okay, so just using a heat gun to then set this powder. So here's the finished piece of that embossing, and you can see how nice that colour looks with designs like this, like the stone wall or the brick wall or anything else that you'd like to have a really nice little subtle colour for your embossing. So I hope this has given you some ideas on how you can use this new Distress Ink colour. It's called Lost Shadow. You can see more ideas over on Tim's YouTube. He's done a video where he's shown you different ink blends and the reasons behind this colour. So definitely check that out. And if you're looking for the products, all of them are available now on the Darkroom Door website at darkroomdoor.com. Thanks so much for watching.